The Executive Overreach Task Force will come to order, and without objection, the Chair is authorized to declare recess of the task force at any time. I'll recognize myself for opening statement. Today's hearing will focus on executive overreach in foreign affairs. The Constitution grants the President, as Commander-in-Chief, clear powers in foreign affairs. However, the Constitution also provides for a check on those powers by, for example, requiring that the Senate approve international treaties and that Congress appropriate all funds needed to foreign military engagements. I'll focus my remarks today on two troubling developments as it relates to those checks the Constitution grants the Congress and not the President. Regarding the Senate's treaty ratification powers, in Paris late last year, the Obama administration also took part in the 21st Conference of Parties to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. Senior administration officials, including Secretary of State John Kerry, Environmental Protection Agency Administrator Gina McCarthy, and Secretary of Energy Ernest Moniz, who visited Ames, Iowa just this past week, and I thank him for that, negotiated the final terms of a new climate change pact, the so-called Paris Agreement. The agreement involves the commitments that will affect every part of the U.S., and the Obama administration intends to meet those commitments by requiring changes to state law. These Paris Agreement criteria, and others listed by the State Department itself in what's called the Circular 175 procedure, show clearly that the Paris Agreement is a treaty that requires the approval of the Senate under Article 2, Section 2, Clause 2 of the Constitution, which provides the President shall have power by and with the advice and consent of the Senate to make treaties provided two-thirds of the senators present concur. Despite this, President Obama has made clear through his spokesperson that he has no intention of consulting or including either the Senate or anyone in Congress in any aspect of the international treaty. On March 31st, 2015, White House spokesman Josh Earnest was asked at a press conference briefing whether Congress has the right to approve the Paris Agreement. Mr. Earnest responded, speaking for the President, as follows, quote, "I think it's hard to take seriously from some members of Congress who deny the fact that climate change exists that they should have some opportunity to render judgment about a climate change agreement." Now think of that for a moment. The chief spokesperson of the President of the United States said that simply because members of Congress might disagree with the President's environmental policies, the constitutional requirement that a treaty be submitted to the Senate for approval is negated. That's outrageous, and it's unlawful, and it's a clear example of the executive overreach in the area of foreign affairs. Regarding the President's powers in war, the President does have much greater constitutional authority in the areas of military affairs than he does in domestic affairs. Yet even in the case of war, the President's powers are not unlimited. One clear limitation on that power is Congress's constitutional authority to appropriate all federal funds for use on anything, including war. Yet President Obama has evaded Congress's control over military appropriations, as many presidents have, by using accounting gimmicks to move funds Congress approved for one purpose to another, as was done to pay for the U.S. intervention in Libya. Today, Congress's power of the purse is weakened because the President has many ways to evade Congress's control over military appropriations, namely accounting procedures to move funds Congress approved for one purpose to another purpose Congress has not approved. In the case of the intervention in Libya, President Obama paid for that conflict entirely out of funds reallocated from other Defense Department accounts. Harold Koh, President Obama's own former legal advisor to the Department of State, has also written that the President has developed over time a whole range of devices to exploit spending loopholes in the appropriation process. When Congress grants the President statutory drawdown authority, he may withdraw certain funds simply by determining that such withdrawals are vital to the security of the United States. Similar statutory provisions allow the President access to special and contingency funds based upon nebulous findings that the use of those funds is important to the security of the United States or to the national interest. When given statutory transfer and reprogramming authority, the President transfers to one appropriations account funds initially appropriated for another, or may reprogram appropriated funds within a single appropriation account, often without specific statutory authority. This is yet another example of executive overreach, albeit one that Congress has been complicit to some extent. Nevertheless, it's an issue that this task force should consider. And I also am thinking about the Iranian treaty agreement, and I expect there will be some remarks with regard to that a little bit later today. And I would point out that Congress has controlled funds with regard to war and done so effectively, and if one would read back through the appropriations debate and language that shut off all funds to support the Vietnam War in the land of Vietnam and the seas adjacent to it, the skies over it, or the countries adjacent to or the skies over them, no funds would be used to conduct a Vietnam War. And it effectively, I'll say, de facto took ammunition off the docks at Da Nang by an act of Congress by using the appropriations language to shut down a war. So that's an example of how a president did honor the wishes of Congress, and we're going to want to talk today about that. But in the meantime, I look forward to hearing from all of our witnesses here today on these and many other issues, and I would recognize the ranking member, Mr. Cohen from Tennessee, for his opening statement.